Okay. Hine yedua shekavonos hayerido de hagolus hiletzayde chaliyah. That the intent of the descent of exile is for the purpose of an elevation. Shal yidei ha'avoida bisman hagolus, through our service during the time of exile, dafke. So that descent and that golus that we're in through this, that will bring about the revelation of the future, which is a higher level than the revelation that was in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. After we go in Golus, and we merit the redemption, the light of redemption, le'osid, is greater than the light that was in the Beis Hamikdash. Uki Yisrain ha'oir min ha'choshech. And like we say, the advantage of life that comes from darkness. Sha'idei ha'choshech nasa Yisrain beha'oir. Through the darkness, that makes a advantage in the light that follows, that it's on a higher level than it was before. That is the goal of the golus, to bring us to a higher level of light that will be la'osilov. The more the descent and the more darkness that it goes lower, the advantage of the light that takes place through that is greater. Move on. So from this we can understand the mekiv on the hagolusi beikir bahaguf kinal sivdalim. Since the main descent to golus is mainly in the body, as we said before in Sivdalit, that the neshama itself is just moved from place to place. It didn't really go down in golus. It's in golus, but it's not really affected by the golus. And mainly what is affected is the body. So therefore, the advantage and the elevation that will be in the future to come, that takes place through the descent of golus. So this is going to come through the descent. Shatia b'haguf, he nailis yoser me'aliyah shatia b'neshama. So the advantage to the guf that takes place through this golus is greater, is mainly by the guf more than it is by the neshama, because the guf went down lower, so the guf is going to go higher, as opposed to the neshama never really had such a great yirida. We can understand it based on what's explained elsewhere. Be'inyan ha'aliyah da'haneshama, aliyah in the guf is on a higher level, canal, ba'aliyah shatiyah b'neshama, higher than the aliyah of the neshama. Since the descent was mainly in the guf, so the aliyah that will be lost in love, it will be mainly in the guf. Explain what is the aliyah of the neshama that takes place through its descent below. The aliyah consists of two aspects. Aleph, number one, the fact that even when the neshama is below and it is dressed up in a body and in an animal soul, she still works and serves Hashem. Through that, that reveals the forceful connection that it has with Hashem. So also the obscurity and the blocks of the body and the nefesh abamis cannot mevatel its connection. God forbid, it stays connected. That comes about when the neshama comes down and is able to continue to do the work down here, cannot mevatel that connection that it has. Not even to make a diminishing in its connection. So it cannot take away totally, and it cannot even diminish. It stays connected to Hashem, the neshama. That's revealed when it comes down to the body and the nefesh habahamis, and it still continues to stay connected. And number two, base, that through the services, the neshama below, nasa habirur v'hazichuch the guf and nefesh habahamis v'chelka ba'olam. The neshama coming below makes up that sorting out and the refinement of the guf, the body, and the animal soul, and this portion of the world is through the neshama coming down to the guf. That's how we can change and be mevarer the guf, the nefesh habahamis, and the portion of the world. So what's the difference between these two things that take place through the neshama's descent into the body? The Binyan ha'alef, in the first case, in the first matter, Yisrein ha'oir hu al yidei ha'choshech. The advantage of the light of the neshama comes through the fact that it's connected with choshech, that it comes down to the choshech. By Yisrein, what is the advantage? That through the darkness you bring out, it's revealed the force of the light. So even the greatest darkness cannot obscure and block for her. As opposed to the second aspect, the advantage of the oir is in the darkness itself. It's not because the choshech reveals a greater level of oir, but that the oir breaks through the choshech, that the choshech begins to light. That the darkness, the body, is turned to light. So what is the advantage in the second part to turn over? That the choshech itself of the guf and nefesh habahamis in the world should be turned to light. In order to turn darkness to light, how do you have the power to take darkness and turn it to light? That comes from atzmus, because atzmus is above the definitions of light and darkness. So from there, you can take darkness and turn to light. And when you turn darkness to light, Mizgala koyach atzmus reveals the power of atzmus, that the power of atzmus that you can change around choshech to make it oir. So that's one advantage, that you bring about and you reveal the power of atzmus because you are working with the guf and nefesh habahamis and turning them into light. That reveals that the choshech itself is turned around, which comes from the power of Atzma. Maybe you say to Mizu and more than this. The Ali they said Dafke Nishlames Hakavona Dinisava Kodesh Baruch Hu Liyas Lo Yisbarach Dilir B'Tachtoin. That way it's fulfilled Hashem's intention, which Hashem wants to be a Dilir B'Tachtoin. It's when you turn the darkness into light. So you have the Koyach Atzmus and you fulfill the Kavona. The Inyan is Avu Batzmusa Yisbarach. Where is this idea that he desired? That's in the essence. In Hashem's in blessed essence is where the desire comes from. And you're fulfilling this wishes of Atzmus of a Diri B'Tachtoin. B'Tanya is explained in Tanya. Sha'akavona b'yididus ha'neshama l'mato, that the intent of the neshama coming down below, he loy b'shvil ha'neshama. It's not for the neshama. Only to fix the body, the animal soul, and the portion of the world. Because dafke through this is fulfilled the intention of Diri B'Tachtoin is by working here below and changing the body and the nefesh habahamis, not for the purpose of the neshama. Yes, the neshama gets elevated as well. It comes to a higher level through working with the guf, but that's not the goal. The goal is to change around the nefesh habahamis chelka ba'olam that fulfills the Diri B'Tachtoin. So what do we see? So the main thing is of the aliyah from the descent, the golus and the struggles is mainly for the guf and nefesh habahamis, because the main descent is in the guf and nefesh habahamis. Ukemoi shehuba aliyah shayidei dinsan neshama lamata. So here we're talking about the main goal of why the neshama came down. It's not for the guf, it's not for the neshama, but it's for the body. So just like the elevation that takes place from the descent of the neshama is not for the neshama, but it's for the guf. Sheikir aliyah is huabir vazichuch da guf v'chulu. It's mainly for the sorting out and the refinement of the body. That's the reason for the neshama coming down below. The same thing is with golus and geula. Similarly, it's also the elevation in the future through the descent of golus. The main descent is in the body. The hayisrein shenase b'neshama idecheshech hagolus, that the advantage that happens to the soul through the darkness of the golus, who gilu toikev hayis kashrus shaloi, like we said before, by the neshama when it comes down to the world. So the golus also reveals the force of the connection of the neshama, that even being in golus, he can still continue to serve Hashem, shagam shemelubesh beguf agufu begolus, that even though that the neshama is dressed in the body and the body is in exile, gam ozan neshama ein no begolus. The neshama even then is not in golus. It's coming from another place, but it's not in golus. It's with the guf, but in itself you can't say that is neshamas didn't go into golus, as the Rebbe quoted before from the Frierdiker Rebbe. Yisrael shenase ba'gufu, and what's the advantage that takes place in the guf through the golusu? Sha'choysher da'haguf k'moishuv begolus, that this darkness of the body, even as it is in golus, shu'choysher godel yoser ma'choysher shaloike hu moishuv mitzad atzmai. That's a greater darkness than the darkness on its own. The fact is, the guf itself is choshech, is darkness. But then when you send the guf away into golus, it increases the darkness. It's a greater darkness, even more than the darkness of the guf by itself when the guf is in golus. When you turn that nepach lo'ir, you turn that darkness that the body experiences, you turn it into light. V'seidim is and more than just turning it to light. Through this, shagam hachoshech shaloi k'moishe hu begolus nepach lo'ir. So what takes place? So since the darkness becomes to oir, he fulfills the kavanah that way. Nishlemes hakavana didira betachtonim. That accomplishes the dira betachtonim, betachton shintach l'mata men. In lower, there is nothing lower than this. All the ways in golus, in the body, when the body is in golus, in there to take that darkness and turn that into light, that's the ultimate kavanah dira betachtonim. It's in the lowest tachtonim. It's in the golus, in the guf, in the golus that we turn it around. So that's the advantage of the aliyah of the guf, because that way you are showing and you're turning around, you're bringing about the dira betachtonim in the lowest of the worlds. When the neshama aliyah is that you show that it's still connected, that despite the fact that it's in golus, it's still not in golus, it still stays remember Hashem. But here we're actually changing that the darkness changes to light, and we fulfill the dira betachtonim. V'hine yadua, it's known shalosi lovei tia neshama nezonis min haguf, that in the future to come, the soul will nourish from the body. So now the neshama sustains the body, but in the future the body will sustain the soul, feed the soul. So based on this, we can say, so therefore, in the future to come, the neshama will get not only the advantage that comes through the choshech, that even though it wasn't choshech and still it remained that advantage, it'll also get that advantage that the choshech itself was turned over, that the just like the guf and nefesh abamis are turned over darkness themselves, the neshama will also get that because it'll get it from the guf. Even though this advantage is mainly the guf which is choshech is turned around, that it becomes the choshech itself turns on, or not that only that it despite the choshech, but the choshech itself, that's mainly by the guf. But gam neshama to kabel mahaguf yifsrein zeh. Also, the neshama will receive from the body this advantage. This is also similar. We're thinking the Golus and Geula similar to the descent of the neshama in the body. So just like it's known, similar to what is known. Through its descent in the guf and nefesh bahamis. So what is the aliyah that happens in the neshama? So the noisef lazeh shalideya hester v'helam v'hester laguf and nefesh bahamis. In addition to the fact that through the block and obscurity of the guf and nefesh bahamis, misoirin u'mizgalin keichas and alamim shel haneshama, you arouse and you reveal powers that were hidden in the neshama. Shahayu gam koydem yiridosa. So they were really there. The powers of the strength of the neshama, that it doesn't really buckle, it doesn't lose its connection, even when you dress up in the guf and nefesh abamis, were really there. But you revealing and you show these koiches that are hidden. Now it's in the open because the neshama came down in the guf and nefesh abamis, and still it didn't change. It still remains connected. Oh, but so in addition to that, through the fact that the neshama sorts out and refines the body, the animal soul, it makes also an addition and an advantage to the neshama also, because the neshama changed the guf, so then the neshama itself gets an advantage to it more than it was before. It's not only that we are revealing what it already has, that connection, this force of the connection, but it actually gets more. As the pasuk says, Moshcheni, so you pull me, acharecha narutza. So we're talking about narutza, we will run. So how do we teach this? Through the fact that the godly soul impacts that the nefesh abamis should also have a love to Hashem, and shahava the nefesh abamis b'derech merutza, and that love of the nefesh abamis, the nefesh abamis is in a way of running. So that impacts al yedei nase narutza gam b'nefesh alikis. So it also impacts that the nefesh alikis also starts to run. Acharecha narutza lo sharabim, will run after you. The nefesh alikis also gets the level of narutza, which it doesn't have on its own, but it only gets it from because it changed the nefesh abamis. So what's the difference now in Golus? Mikivan shaneshama mashpia va'gufu avakabel. The neshama is the mashpia, the guf is the recipient. Yisrin zeh haneshama shemakabel b'haguf eine b'shleimus. This advantage that the neshama gets from the body is not complete. B'shleimus the yisrin zeh yilosi love, but the completeness, the wholesomeness of this advantage that the neshama gets from the body is going to be in the future to come. Because the body then will be nurtured from the soul will be nurtured from the body. And that's why at that point, it will get the full, complete advantage that the nefesh habahamis, the guf has, and it will also give it and the advantage to the neshama in La'asid Lavai, because the neshama impacted and brought the guf to that level. So we're going now back to explain the pasuk of Tziyun b'mishpat tefda ושבי בצדקה. And one of the questions the Rebbe asked before, that, Tziyun b'mishpat, we learned, refers to the neshama, and actually the guf. And Shaveo, those who only have to return, because the neshama never was in Golus, as the Rebbe explained. So it doesn't need Pedia. Pedia is the Tziyun in B'mishpat Tipoda. And Shaveo, the returnees, meaning the neshama, which only gets returned back, is B'tzedakah. So the Rebbe asked, the question was, why is that mishpat by right, and the neshama is a tzedakah? It's chaylev fakeret. The neshama is by right. It never really went to Golus, and the fact that Sion, was mamish in captivity, that seems like more like a tzedakah. And the Rebbe is going to explain, based on what we just learned, that the turnaround that happens in the guf, that's an aliyah, because the guf is turned into oil, but the neshama that it gets from the guf, the advantage is b'teres tzedakah. Let's look inside. V'zeu tzima mishpat tipoda v'shaveh b'tzedakah. So why are we called Tziyun in the first place? Which is generally all of Torah mitzvahs. That's why they are called Tziyun. That way they become on the level of Tziyun. They are a siman, distinguished, a sign, a marker. Which means the gamkshin tzayim begolus, even when they are in exile, einum nabodim chas v'sholem beina omus. They're not lost amongst the nation. They stand out. They're always marked. They're always at sea, and there's always a sign. Similarly to something that has a sign, literally, if you have it siman, through the sign that you find, you turn it back to the owners. So that's why they're tziyun, because they're occupied in Torah mitzvahs. We say to Mizu, and more than this, bizman hagolus nase bahem yisrim v'aliyah. The fact that they do and occupy themselves Torah mitzvahs in exile, that brings an advantage and an elevation. Higher than they were in Zman HaBayis. They become even a greater tziyun, because their connection is revealed even in the Golus, even in Golus, that they are occupied in Torah mitzvahs. And the advantage that you get from doing Torah mitzvahs even during Golus is in the two areas. Aleph, number one, that through the service of Bizman HaGolus is revealed, Kenal Sivhei. I said earlier in Sivhei, the force and the unlimited of the Oir, Shagam Choshech HaChigodl, that even though you are in a very big darkness, Choshech HaGolus, the darkness of Golus, which would also include this double and quadrupled darkness of the hills of Mashiach. They don't block by him. The Beklolus, this is the advantage that takes place in Golus through the Torah mitzvahs, that Beklolus generally speaking, that's the oil which is higher than Kalim, so the Kalim do not obscure the oil shebahavdola. It's a light which is removed, which is without limit. But even though that it is distinguished, but it's still oil. It's oil bligvul, but it's a oil higher than king. Obeys, but number two, shayidei hafichas hachoshech le'oir. When you turn around, when you're in Golus, and you turn the darkness to light, mizgala ha'atzmus shalamaylam ha'gedorim, it reveals the atzmus which is higher than even Oir Cheshach altogether, that even Cheshach can be Oir. So what does the Golus accomplish? The Golus accomplishes in the two areas. First of all, it points to the deep connection from a Yid to the Eibishter, that despite the Golus, which points to the Oir, which is higher than Kalim. But then the fact that in Golus we turn the exile and turn the darkness into light, then you get Atzmos, reveal the Atzmos, which is higher Bechlal than Erva Choshech, even higher than the previous year. Behine, the Pasuk zeh. So in this Pasuk, Hasiyum v'achoisam shel ha'Torah Chazon Yeshayahu, which is the end and the conclusion, the seal of the Torah Chazon Yeshayahu. The Inyonei shel Yeshayahu kishmo Yeshua. What is the idea of Yeshaya? That means salvation, Yeshua. V'ad li Yeshua amitis shehi agula shleima she'eina achareh golus. Yeshua, but the true, up to the extent it's Yeshua, the true Yeshua, which is when it will be the complete redemption without a golus afterwards. The previous redemptions weren't complete because they're followed by another golus. The zehu gam mashamamshem bakosuf. And this is why the pasuk also says Chazon Yeshayahu asher chazor b'yimei Yechizkiyahu. So he connects it to the days of Yechizkiyahu. Shebikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasis Chizkiyahu Mashiach. Hashem wanted to make Chizkiyahu Mashiach, so it alludes to the fact that this is a Yeshua also on the Geula Amitis Vashlema, because it's to do with the Chizkiyahu Mashiach. Medaber b'ha'aliyah sheyiyah b'geula hasidah. So here we're talking about the advantage that will be in the future redemption. Ubzeh gufa, and within that, be'ilui habeis, in the second advantage that comes through Golus, the advantage of Gilu Ha'atzmus, shu iker ha'tachlis da ha'golus, which is the main purpose of the Golus. V'zehu oimroi, and this is why it says tipode v'shovel, that the advantage is both tipode, which is the guf, shovel is the neshomesh. Ilu zehu hein ba'agviv, sheyipode ma'golus, it's redeemed from Golus tipode. It's also the neshama shetoshu mimokem hagoyle v'shivya. It will return from the place of Gol and Shivya. And now we understand. V'zehu gam tipode b'mishpat v'shovel b'tzedakah. Why is he saying that the dia of the guf is by justice, and the shovel, the neshama, is tzedakah? It's lifnim shursim. Why is that? The ilu shet yeh ba'guf tipode, because the fact that the guf advantage, that it's redeemed, hu b'mishpat, that's by right. The kivon shaguf hoya b'golus mamish, since the actual guf was in the exile, within the body there was that turnaround from darkness to light. So therefore the advantage and the elevation that happens through this Magila Pishur Sadin deserves it by the right of the law, by Mishpat. But the neshama, which is only in the place of exile, never it's returning from the place. That it's going to reach that level. That's not by right. Fascinating explanation that here the guf is the one that really had the yerida, so it deserves to that aliyah. But the neshama is going to get it from the guf. It never really experienced the goals, and still it will reach that level of the gilu atzmus. It's through tzedakah. But the Rebbe says, it seems like we can add that there is a one detail, there is a actually an advantage to the aliyah of the neshama, even though the neshama is lifnei meshurus adin, but that alone, and the guf gets it up idin, the fact that it's lifnei meshurus adin means it's way beyond measure. The neshama, the aliyah, the guf shu b'mishpat, the aliyah of the guf, which is by right, that it makes sense, it's according to the calculation of reason and rationale. There's some sort of a measure and limitation, because it's based, it makes sense. Shenkin aliyah the neshama, the neviv the neshama, yishe b'tzedkah, hilamaylu mikol medida v'agbola is beyond any measure and limitation. Ve'mikra yoytze midei pshutei, and the pasuk cannot be taken out from its literal meaning. So it means, not only that, dafka the limud apshat mizgal ha'etzem the Torah, it's revealed the as of Torah. Kipshat hu ba'olam ha'asiyah, because simple meaning is in the world of asiyah. In this world, that's where the pshat is. Shaboy dafka nishlames hakavod the dir v'tachtoinu. In this asiyah is completed the intent of dir v'tachtoinu. L'chayre yesh loymar. So the Chayru can say, Zeo gam atam b'pnimis inyonim, reason in the inner matter of things. Zeh shal limud tanikas shebeis rabim. Hevel shem bechet. What we study with the children that go to school, the young children, those are the air that has no sin, meaning no pure of the children who dafka pi pshat. It only is specific pi pshat. That's why, because this is where the dire betachtonim is in Eilam Ha'asiyah, in the Mikra Yitzim de Pshutei. This is where the Kavana is. Same thing is for our Inyan. Haposik Tzien b'mishpat tipode v'shoveh b'tzedkah. Also, the very literal, that's the main thing. That's in Asiyah, that's in Pshat. She'ikir ha'inyan hazeh hu pirush haposik pshutei. The mainly is literally not taking out of golos, not the level of the neshama, the guf, habediyah, vayitziyah, ma'golos bepashtus, being redeemed and going out in golos literally, begula mitzvah shlema, the true and complete redemption of the Mashiach tzidkenu, the korev mamesh, ba'gola didan.